smelly things. Smelly cat-like things. Smelly skunk-like things? I'm not sure. Is he a cat? Is he a skunk? Is he just a thing? Well, I mean, I guess he's a creature of Eternia. But either way, we're talking about Stinkor, the beloved smelly toy from the 80s that probably embraced by children everywhere and annoyed by parents everywhere, or at least it drove parents crazy because, it smelled. and Getting this smelly figure from the 80s into the classics line was something that was long awaited by fans, wondering when we were going to get to Stinkor, and people asking when I was going to get to a video on Stinkor. And if people haven't noticed, I'm going in exact release order, so that's why we're doing him now, because he was the next figure released. Although he was delayed a month from when he was supposed to ship, we did manage to get an updated Stinkor to everyone in as quick time as possible, and getting him from the vintage figure to classics was a fun road. The vintage figure came out pretty much smack in the middle of the vintage run. The vintage figure came out in the vintage run. You'd think I'd come up with a better adjective. Sounds a little repetitive there. I might have to work on that. And of course came on the standard orange-red burst card, but he had one of the cooler call-outs, I think, of not just any figure in Masters of the Universe, but pretty much any figure that came out in the 80s, because his card called out his action feature, which was both a swivel waist and the fact that he smelled. And it boldly told kids that the figure smells. It's fun. I love when toys have to tell you that they're fun, because, otherwise we would have no idea. So yes, Stinkor, the figure that could be represented in art by squiggly lines, the universal symbol for smell in comic books, was now here and kids could enjoy him. Now, looking at him from a build perspective, he is a direct pickup from Merman. Like, literally a direct pickup from Merman. He is Merman in a new color, even to the point that he uses Merman's head, much like Mossman used Beastman's head. But hey, it was a great way to have cost savings. And honestly, it took until I was probably a teenager or close to college before I realized this. As a kid, I had no idea that it was the same head, even though it, clearly is. It's interesting, especially because Merman was supposed to have a different head. In both the mini-comic art, some of the promotional materials, and even on the card back, Merman has much more of, I guess you could say, an aquatic Jack Kirby-esque head. And when he shipped, it was trimmed down a little bit, and yeah, it did look a little feline-esque. So it's no wonder the head was picked up for another figure. Stinkor has remained very, very popular over the years, and he tends to show up in pretty much every incarnation of MOTU, especially because he's also an easy repaint. Because when the figure uses existing parts down to an existing head, well, except for things like Funko, where every figure is fully sculpted, you can basically, do a Stinkor figure in your line simply by repainting your existing Merman. And anytime you can do that, you can just share tooling and do a repaint and make an original character. Hey, it's easy to get them in the line. And like his counterpart in the Heroic Warriors, Stinkor would have the action feature, I guess if you'll call it an action feature, of being scented. Now, scented toys are, not that hard to find. They're available in almost every category, from stickers to markers to Play-Doh, art supplies. There are tons of toys that are scented. There were dolls in the 80s that their entire premise was that they were scented. I actually loved the smell of strawberry shortcake. My sister had strawberry shortcake. It's one of my favorite smells, that plastic and strawberry. And I don't know why this plush pig smells like bubble gum, but sure, why not? Hey, scents are fun. And scents and smelly scents are really fun to young boys between 4 and 10, which was the target audience. These are the boys that love fart jokes, that love smelly jokes, that love gross out jokes. Just look at things like Garbage Pail Kids and how well they did in the 80s with this demographic. So having an action figure that has a bad smell to it was sort of a no-brainer, especially if you're going to make him evil. And while kids might plug their nose and think this is gross, they're still laughing all the way to the bank. And that might still make mom and dad and the gift givers a little hesitant when they realize that this figure smelled. But hey, if you were an evil supervillain without a nose, you were in the safety zone. So, All hail Lord who cannot say his name. So how does the smell get added to Stinkor? Is it magic? Is it science? Well, no, obviously, of course it's magic. I mean, we don't have science. So when the toy is made as a plastic product, like anything made of plastic, using a tool and an injected mold machine, you can basically make any type of plastic by putting it into what's called the hopper here before it's heated up. And if you want that toy to smell or have any scent, whether it's strawberry, bubble gum, or the delicious smell of doom that Stinkor has, well, in order to get plastic figures like this out of your injection molded machine, you simply take the original plastic, which usually comes in beaded form like this, and is put into, as I said, the hopper and heated up. When it is in its liquid form, you can then add scent to it. So it's really as simple as that. It's like when you add scented oils into a, like a vaporizer. And in this case, the scent that was added was patchouli, which is an all-natural scent. All-natural in the sense that it's an actual plant that grows. And just like other, natural scents like vanilla and et cetera, you can take patchouli and turn it into an oil and add that to pretty much any type of product. And if you want to bake it into the plastic of an action figure, you simply add it into the plastic when the plastic is in liquid form. And suddenly now you have plastic that smells like patchouli. Patchouli is pretty easy to perquire, to get. It's an oil actually that a lot of people enjoy the smell of, which is interesting because it was chosen to represent evil, and but it's really a scent that a lot of massage therapists use because clients enjoy the scent of patchouli. So there we had Stinkor in all of his patchouli-smelling glory. And in the vintage line, he didn't have much of an origin. A little of it was fleshed out in the bios from the 1987 licensor kit, which were picked up directly for the Classics bios. And even the mini-comic, he doesn't have much. I mean, Hordak calls him a heathen, which is interesting because I didn't know that Hordak was that much of a religious man, but I guess he is. We'll have to get into that in a whole other video sometime. What is the religion of Hordak, and why is Stinkor a betrayer of that? But in the 2000X series by Mike Young Productions, we meet Stinkor's entire race. And while he starts off as a cute puppy dog-eyed little guy, he quickly mutates into a ferocious big guy and gains his stinking powers, shall we say, and has to actually wear a gas mask himself because he smells so bad, until Skeletor and Trapjaw are able to armor him up with a containment unit to keep his scent from driving all of the other evil warriors away, and, if you will, weaponizing his scent. Because, again, kids love smells and bad smells and fart jokes and, all that kind of stuff. So if you can make a character that's going to attack you with a bad smell, you basically hit a gold mine for your target audience of the young boy. So, while Stinkor never had a figure in the 2000X line, which is a darn shame and a crime against humanity, he did get a really cool redesign for the show and eventually a stacktion figure that the Four Horsemen did. These were the non-articulated figures that NECA produced under license that were designed to fit directly into the 2000X line. So for people who were just displaying the figures on their shelf and not actually playing with them, you could get a stacktion and just put it there right next to your other 2000X figures, and it basically just looked like yet another figure, even though it didn't move, it didn't have articulation, but geniusly sculpted to look like part of the line. The stactions were honestly amazing for their time, and glad the Horsemen did them because we got a lot of cool figures out of it. And the 2000X design also finally separated Merman and Stinkor, so they weren't just repaints of each other with unique heads, Merman's being more fish-like, and Stinkor's being more cat-like, if you will. So, now we were ready to translate this figure from vintage figure and 2000X figure into the modern line, and load them up with as many accessories as possible, and fulfill so many fans' expectations to finally have the evil Master of Odors in their collection. So, of course, he, like every other figure, comes in the traditional Grayskull green brick card, but we did have the call out that he smells and he's fun on the side, picking that directly up. His bio was pretty much a direct pickup from the 2000X show because he had a full on-screen origin, unlike most other characters that you just sort of met. I think him and Too Bad, a few others, actually had their origin shown. His armor was customizable. You can see that little peg hole at the top so that you could do both the 2000X and the vintage look. He not only came with a shield, a gun, and a backpack, but he came with 2 different attachments for the armor, as well as a face mask that would fit over the 2000X head. So fully loaded up, he had a nice mix of both orange and blue, where the vintage figure really just had the orange and black for his fur, I guess, if you will. But with the addition of the backpack and the faceplate, it added a different color scheme to him. And while the vintage figure was a direct repaint of Merman, and we did want to pay homage to that by giving you the Merman head, the sort of cat-esque head in the Classics version, we also wanted to give him his own proper head, much as we did for Mossman, who again we gave the Beastman head and we gave an original head too. So that was more kind of serene and not screaming the way the Beastman head is. So we did the same thing with Stinkor. So here is, you can see Stinkor's head directly compared to Merman's. It was a direct pickup of the same tool, but the Horseman created an original head that was based more on the 2000X look with a more feline look, especially with the ears and the way the hair is done. So here you can see it compared with Merman and the difference. Now there was a little bit of an issue with the construction of this figure, and part of it was because we had a new design team. The designers switched out about every year on the line. First we had Terry, then we had Bill, then we had Terry back. This was one of the first figures that a new design team that was led by Ruben Martinez, who actually worked on the 2000X line, and under him was Mario, who actually did all the work. Ruben was his supervisor. So when Mario put the figure together, he wanted the figure to look a little different and add his own touch, and he had the gloves turned around. He thought that would be fun because to show like the stink coming out of him, and the gloves were flowing backwards. Not something the fans appreciated. There was a lot of pushback about this, but sometimes this is what you get to do when you're a Mattel designer, and unfortunately my powers as brand manager only go so far to command people to do what I say, and that's not my place to do. So as we got a new design team, they added their own flourish to the line, and it's just kind of one of the things that happens is, unfortunately, you can't always have consistent design work, because when you're doing a line that is sold online and not at retail, it's not exactly high profile, and it's not a line that people are fighting to work on, because you get credit for the lines at retail because they're very high profile as far as publicity and company politics and all that. When you're doing an online toy line, it tends to be you get whoever you can get to work on it, because there's not that much prestige company-wide for doing something like this, since it's not at retail and it's not moving the stock price, it's not bringing in the big bucks. So you're basically getting the resources you can get, and that includes design resources. But pulled it off nonetheless, and the figure really does look great. And glad we finally got to him, because he was requested from day one, and now we finally had Stinkor, both his fishy, kitty merman head and an original head, as well as lots of armor. And hey, he was really badass, and even if he didn't come with his own patchouli plant accessory, should have done that. That would have been cool.